Here's what I was thinking, though, is that considering that silvered weapons are really only used for specific kinds of monsters, I would really hope that if you've gone through the trouble to get a silvered weapon, that it would do more than just regular damage to a lycanthrope. I honestly think that like lycanthropes should have a weakness to silver. So, next up on the chopping block, me. I'm up on the chopping block. Yeah.
Put your head down and get ready for the dragon to come and rescue you.
Hippity hoppity, time for chippity choppity, and it's me on the chopping block, and there's a reason. So, mechanically speaking, is what we're going to be doing right now, because we've got a little bit to talk about revolving around lycanthropy and the mechanics of it.
Yeah, a little bit. So to preface this,
yes,
Nathan, we're playing D&D, as we've mentioned a few times, and you guys went up against some were-rats.
Yep.
And boy, you disarmed that were-rat.
Yeah.
With heat metal. It dropped its sword.
Did.
So it decided to bite you.
Yeah, it bit me.
And you kind of might have failed your Constitution saving throw. I think you got, what, a 4?
I got a 4.
You got a 4. And the DC for that is an 11, by the way.
Yeah.
So you quite handily failed that con saving throw.
Yep.
So Max Jaguar may or may not have been cursed with a bit of lycanthropy.
Yeah. Technically, I think the rat still had his sword. I ended up disarming Gwyn, and she had to pick her sword back up.
Whatever.
But there were 2 attacks. The rat failed with the short sword, but then the bite got through.
Yeah.
And so when we reconvened, Max is kind of looking at his wound, thinking to himself, I don't know if that, should I worry about that? And after a little bit of trying to figure out how we were going to kind of move that story forward, we went to, what was the character that we went to?
I don't remember. The apothecary.
Yeah, it was an apothecary character from earlier in the campaign who basically told Max, yeah, it's looking like you got some of that lycanthropy going on there. You got some of that. You got
the biggest issue here is that as we talked about before, in the module, there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
It's just a one-off event where there are were-rats, essentially.
Yeah.
And I don't think it comes up anywhere else, and there's not really a healer or anyone in town that can deal with that.
Yeah.
But there's also no real story threads
to go with, yeah.
To go with if a character catches lycanthropy.
Because that was the next thing I asked is okay, so I have it. Is there a way to cure it if I wanted to cure it? Is that and you were kind of like, I don't think there's literally a cleric or any kind of character in this game. Like in Phandalin, there doesn't seem to be any character that can do it. And so I'm sitting there okay. So what do I do? I'm not a cleric. We don't have clerics in the party. I guess what they wanted to do is if somebody became a were-rat, you're gonna be a were-rat, dude. That's kind of the upshot. And it's that's not terrible. But as you had made mention to me before, having been a lycanthrope with Hephaestus, if we go by rules as written in D&D, lycanthropes are insanely powerful over what player characters really should be.
Oh, yeah, 100%. You get bonuses to a score if it's not better than the one they already have.
Yep.
In your case, I don't think you'd gain a bonus to your dexterity, but you would have.
Yeah.
And then you gain damage immunities.
Yeah, it's the damage immunities that are the big deal. Literally just immunity from slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning damage from non-silver, non-magical weapons.
Yeah.
And a few other cool things, you usually get, a bonus ability for were-rats, it's keen smell, which is, I guess, it's kind of useful, and also that you get shape-shifting abilities, so that you have a hybrid and an animal form.
And I read up because I was looking at this up the other day in the monster manual, which does have an entry on lycanthropes.
Yeah.
Where Tiger, which Hef was, gets a bite. I think he gets a couple. No, the bear gets a claw, like a decent claw attack. Like it's 2d10 bite and 2d8 claw.
Yeah.
So bear is like just brutal. The tiger gets a claw attack and a bite attack at the shape change, but also gets a pounce.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because, good at jumping. Also, apparently they're very like slender, muscular builds, and they're bigger than even they normally would be as a were-tiger. So like Hef would have actually been like a head taller than he would have been and just bulked.
Got it. Yeah.
So as I was reading through this, I wanted to see what the monster manual said about lycanthropes. Because I knew you want to talk about it. So I was like, all right, I'm going to look this up. So each of the different were variants has their own alignment to them.
They do.
Rules as written in the book. Bears are neutral good. Tigers are just true neutral. Rats are lawful evil.
Yes.
Because they are like a thieves guild, so they have some code of conduct, I assume.
Yeah.
Which I'll get back to in a minute.
Yeah.
And I think wolves are chaotic evil, and then boars are neutral evil, maybe. The interesting thing about the were-rats being lawful evil, though, is generally speaking, evil characters that are lawful tend to function under a code of conduct like thieves do, where they may not be good characters, but their word is usually their bond.
Yeah.
And so they don't tend to break they might go back on it later by doing something else just as bad.
Sure.
But like, if you make a deal with an evil character that's lawful and say, they go, yes, if you do this for us, we'll leave. Generally, their word is their bond. You've done this thing. They're like, all right, well, I was hoping you wouldn't actually do this kind of deal. I was hoping you'd fucking die.
Yeah.
But since you did it, we kind of gave you our word would leave, so we're gonna leave, but we'll come back later and then murder you. It's kind of what, like, that would be like with a lawful evil character. But the were-rats that you guys encountered were like, yeah, go do this thing for us and we'll leave. And then it's written that they didn't plan on leaving at all.
Right.
Which doesn't seem like something a creature that has a code of conduct would do.
Yeah.
For one thing.
Yeah. It's an odd encounter in general.
Yeah. So even then, looking at it that way, I'm like, well, this seems like it wasn't written with the creatures in mind and a way to deal with them, and then a way to deal with the ramifications of someone becoming a lycanthrope.
Right. Right.
Another thing I read is that there are two different things you can do as a lycanthrope. Typically, some people will resist that nature, and then what happens is they just kind of live their life normally until full moon happens, and they kind of just give in to the bloodlust, essentially.
Sure.
They go wild. Murders, rampages. I don't know exactly what each animal would do. In your case, you might go steal a bunch of things, I would assume.
Possibly.
If you're functioning like a thief.
Yeah.
You might tunnel into some banks and commit robberies. Generally, people that resist it don't remember or have like really bad dreams around the full moon, which are just blood-filled and just you not remembering the fact it's not a dream, it's actually vague memories of what happens.
Sure.
Or there are those that give it into the curse and see it kind of as a blessing. And just, the book is like, yeah, either you can resist it or you can just accept it.
Sure.
And accepting it, you can take months and whatever to like master it.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is that. I was also looking at the possibility that I don't know if they ever actually specify with like one lycanthrope to another if you turn into your hybrid form or possibly you just turn into your animal form. And if it's the animal form, it's really easy to deal with me because I just turn into a rat once a full moon, and you just put me in a little cage with a little hamster wheel, and I'm a little.
I assume during the full moon you turn to your hybrid form.
Probably. At which point you have like a 3-foot tall were-rat terrorizing the city.
Yeah.
Because I'm still very small as a gnome. So there is that. But yeah, so there's been a lot of talk pretty much from the time that 5e started, where people were like, okay, can we redesign this so it's a little bit more balanced? Because, yeah, sure, you have that part where you just lose control on a full moon, but besides that, it's pretty much just all good stuff. It's just like...
Yeah.
It's good out of the gate. One of the things I found about the possible redesign, which I thought we could jump off of, came 8 years ago on Reddit.
Jesus Christ, I didn't realize 5e is that old already.
Yep, it is. And it was actually from user Hada Raccoon. I like that.
You're gonna have to put that up on screen.
I will. In fact, I tell you what I'll do for you right now, though. I will link it so that you can at least see what variants. I love that. So that you can see this one. It was one of the more interesting ones that I found. But basically some highlights to the approach that they used, that the non-magical immunities actually just start as resistances, and then they become immunities when players master lycanthropy.
Yeah.
And only fully exist when in animal or hybrid forms.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because I understand, like, in movies and in fiction and stuff where lycanthropes, yeah, they just are immune to that damage because they're always a werewolf, for instance. Unless you're getting stabbed with a silver sword, you're gonna be like, meh.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a vampire. Unless you're stabbing them with a wooden stake, they're gonna not really care.
Right. Right.
But in this case, you're giving it to a player, and you're like, yeah, now you're just kind of immune to most damage. Unless someone's got a magical weapon, and 5e is notoriously magic weapon light.
Yeah. Especially early on in the game. Like, you're not gonna see... Like, in the campaign that we've been in, there's been a surprising lack of any kind of, like, high-end magical, like, soldiers or anything that has, like, magical weapons or spellcasters. So there's not, like, a lot that, by nature, are going to affect you in that particular campaign. Some of the other interesting points, though, players who have not fully mastered lycanthropy always suffer one level of exhaustion from transforming or attempting to transform. I feel like exhaustion is one of those mechanics that's rarely understood or utilized, and is mostly there to say that, like, if you get too exhausted, you're dead or unconscious.
Yeah.
But there's the possibility that it's transforming as like a ritual cast if you are not mastering it, that it's loud, that cures get harder to do over time, which I actually kind of like that. I like the idea that you would have to, as time goes on, you would have to, like, not do a curse, like a remove curse at, like, level 3. Like, you would have to have a higher spell level as time goes on. Not about alignment changes, but it can cause madness. Herbal supplements can be used to assuage effects. Dropping to 0 always forces involuntary transformation. You get temporary hit points, and you're under the DM control. That's fun. That's saucy.
Yeah, the issue there is that if falling to 0 hit points automatically transforms you,
yeah,
well, then you suddenly become a much tougher thing to take to 0 hit points.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Although I think that the way that they're laying this out here is, okay, so you go down to 0 and you're on the ground. You automatically become like you become a hybrid lycanthrope. You get some temporary hit points, 1d6 temporary hit points, not a ton. And then the DM controls you, and you basically are in frenzy mode, and you can just be attacking whoever you want.
Yeah, so imagine your player's a barbarian.
Fun!
And you go, yeah, I'm a reckless berserker, whatever their thing is. I don't care about my hit points. I am just going in and slaughtering you. Oh, you hurt me. I just get madder. I get madder. And then you take the barbarian down. and then suddenly they transform into a werebear.
Yeah.
And then they maul the fuck out of you.
Yeah, be like those enemies in Borderlands that are like those berserkers, and you take off their helmet, and all of a sudden they go into berserk mode, and every time they kill something, they just get more and more powerful.
Yeah.
Those are always fun. So I thought that those were some interesting ideas. I've had a few thoughts on it too. Like I honestly feel like the whole idea of damage immunities for lycanthropes as a general rule, whether they're on the enemies or on the players, is just completely broken. I can understand resistances. Like, if you're resistant to, like, slashing damage, I get that. Maybe you have big hide, your hide is thicker. I can kind of understand that. But just straight up, it does nothing to me, is kind of ridiculous. And I wouldn't imagine that it would make much sense, especially, fighting them, but also just in general as a player character. I can understand why they would say, like, maybe you get immunity to them, but at the level that you get it, it doesn't show up as often. Just the regular ones. The other thing, though, that I kept thinking about is, so it's non-magical and non-silvered weapons.
Yeah, one or the other.
One or the other, or could they be both? Could a magical weapon
Or
also
you
be
could have a magical silver weapon.
That'd be pretty sweet. Here's what I was thinking, though, is that considering that silvered weapons are really only used for specific kinds of monsters, I would really hope that if you've gone through the trouble to get a silvered weapon, that it would do more than just regular damage to a lycanthrope. I honestly think that, like, lycanthropes should have a weakness to silver. They should have weakness to silvered weapons, so that when you're like, I am a lycanthrope hunter, I'm the hunter of werewolves, and I have a spear that's made of silver, I've done the work, I can go up and I get double damage for having used the silvered weapon.
There are spells that do a lot more damage to shape changers.
Yeah.
Moonbeam is one of them. Druids get several of them.
Oh, fun.
Moonbeam is like a radiant pillar of light, and it's like any shape changer in it is like dealt double damage.
Fun.
And then like they're forced to change back into their like normal thing or whatever sometimes.
Sure.
I can't remember exactly what it does, but
yeah.
There's also, I think, a moon blade probably.
Yeah.
But you could have similar to in Skyrim, where you've got the Lunar Forge. When the moon's out, it deals more damage. Those enchantments.
Yeah.
Silent Moon's one. You could get something like that, maybe.
Sure.
Or even just some consumable item that you could like spice your blade up with.
Ooh, spicy. Yeah.
As opposed to like alchemical silver, maybe you've got an herb concoction.
Sure.
So there are things you could do potentially for more damage or to hurt them more, but
sure. Yeah. I especially think that it's like one of those things that the players were not really prepared for or didn't really have any way of knowing about until all of a sudden were-rats show up. And then you're like, okay, so what are we supposed to do with that? One of the things that I did look at just to try and get an idea of like just lycanthropes as a general rule is I did look a little bit about just the lore in like World of Darkness. Because in World of Darkness, werewolves are very, very powerful. Like usually you think Vampire the Masquerade. Vampires will run the fuck away from a werewolf the second one shows up, and they are nigh on invincible. Maybe that's the reason why they also appear to be pretty difficult to kill in D&D. I don't know. But, also, vampires also pretty powerful in D&D, also a thing. But yeah, no, I thought silvered weapons, the one thing that's really tricky is that, as the primary spellcaster of the party, I'm also the best suited to deal with lycanthropes, and I am the lycanthrope. So,
True.
so if I do transform and just go on a rampage, there's not a ton that everybody else can do to stop me. And that's a problem. So one of the first things I was thinking about was maybe I can commission a special weapon so that if I do attack, you can poke me, and it will probably make me not want to attack you anymore.
Just make you switch targets.
Make you switch targets, yeah. That was the other thing I was thinking, like how garlic is something that like vampires immediately get, or the holy symbols or the water or something. I feel like there should be something to turn lycanthropes away, like
probably mistletoe
mistletoe. Yeah, let's
or holly missile. Yeah,
hollyhock missile. That would be great. I don't know. Maybe the smell of a skunk. A lot of times wolves don't like that. Rats. Rats you could probably lure with the smell of cheese.
Yeah, peanut butter, more like.
Ooh, peanut butter. I could do that. I could make that. I just use my prestidigitation to make the smell of cheese over there, and for an hour or so after transformation, I'll just be sniffing the cheese on the thing. I keep thinking, like, it would be interesting, though, if different lycanthropes actually did have things that they were specifically averse to, or specifically attracted to, especially when they're in a hybrid form. That would also be interesting to help characters that have studied it figure out ways around it. Because I keep thinking, like, we encountered were-rats in a cave, but imagine you stumble upon a town that's literally under siege by lycanthropes. You would imagine that they would have found ways to, like, protect their houses or something from having the lycanthropes just maul them to death. And I'd like to think that there were more weaknesses or actual, like, things to hurt the lycanthropes specifically in the manual. They pretty much just gave you all the cool things with really very little of the curse element of like, it's called the curse of lycanthropy, but it's not much of a curse.
Yeah, there's not really a curse if you're getting bonuses.
My stats go up, I get special skills, and I get immunity from regular weapons.
Yeah.
What a terrible curse to have. It's
a terrible night for a curse.
Terrible night for a curse. Absolutely. I would have loved to see a whole thing about, okay, so based on the lycanthrope that you're a were-rat, a were-boar, bear, tiger, wolf. These are also things that you don't like, that you will automatically turn away from, that you get damaged by, that weaken you. A lot of things that are going to be harmful to you.
Werewolves don't like wolfsbane.
There you go. We need stuff like that for every single kind of lycanthrope. We need that kind
Were-rats get easily caught in rat traps.
Oh, that would be fun.
If you make... what are those big crazy machines?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Rube Goldberg machine?
Rube Goldberg, yeah.
Yeah. If you get a rat in a Rube Goldberg machine with a piece of cheese at it, you can catch it.
Yeah, that would be great.
It's a rat trap.
You know what?
Or mouse trap.
Yeah. You know what we need? We need Mark Rober to build, like, that squirrel the squirrel ninja warrior course that he made in the backyard. But that, for were-rats. We'll build a bigger version of that. And then the were-rat has to... I mean, they're very agile, but I don't think they'd want to get through there so that they can get to the seeds. So, there's that. But yeah, lycanthropes need a big overhaul, and also need a little bit more rule set, I think, for players that
maybe we'll get that in 60.
Yes. Or 5.5, because I have a feeling that's really what we're getting to soon. I would love, if they're going to do updates or expansions of the rules, which they pretty much said that they're going to do, yeah, if we can get a lot more detail on lycanthropy, vampirism, any other long-term status effects and curses, and what that does to players, that would be terrific. really, really like that. Because I have a feeling that the way around it, as you might have mentioned, is that if I have immunity to all basic weapons, all the enemies are just going to have +1 weapons. So
Yeah. Or they're going to be toting silver around.
they're just toting silver around.
Because suddenly there's been a lot of talk about how lycanthropes have been around the town.
Yeah,
And so
Yeah.
the local silversmith has been making bank
yeah.
by giving everybody silver weapons and ammunition.
There could be like an escalation meter or like a crisis meter where it's like the number of times that people have noticed an attack by a lycanthrope raises the alert level of towns that you're in and cause them to put like more resources into studying it until you actually have a problem where they're on alert and high alert and stuff like that. That'd be fun. Similar to like what they did with the Splinter Cell games, where like they notice bodies or something going wrong, and so they bring in more troops. They put on their body armor. They get their tactical gear. Thermal goggles come on.
Yeah.
That's what we need. Night vision goggles. They start issuing night vision goggles to all the guards in town so they can spot the lycanthropes at night on a full moon. Yeah. So lycanthropes. If anybody is out there and has an idea of what you might want to do to fix lycanthropes, because I think we've all, for apparently 8 years running now, have realized that there is a little bit of a disparity in the overpoweredness of lycanthropes, and we're looking to find a rule set that might work better long term.